Some of history's most profound secrets are hidden in plain sight, written in ancient books. This journey examines 15 ancient texts that describe lost technologies, and by the end, you will see human history through an entirely new lens. We will explore descriptions of flying machines and celestial computers, asking why so many cultures wrote about wonders they could not possibly build. Did our ancestors possess a science we have yet to rediscover, or are we misreading their myths? What does it mean for our own civilization if the greatest heights of technology were reached not in our future, but in our distant past? The quest for these lost machines begins not in a dusty library, but in a quiet study in 1923. There, a respected Sanskrit scholar named Subbaraya Shastri was dictating a text he said came to him from a celestial sage. This was the Vaimanika Shastra, a manual claiming to reveal the science of aeronautics, the construction of ancient flying vehicles known as Vimanas. Its pages are filled with intricate diagrams and precise instructions, detailing everything from the ideal metals for the hull to the pilot's diet. It describes propulsion systems powered by swirling mercury, engines that could harness atmospheric electricity, and guidance systems that use the sun and moon for navigation. To a modern reader, it sounds like a blend of advanced physics and science fiction, and that is precisely where the mystery deepens. When aerospace engineers from the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore analyzed the text in the 1970s, they found a curious mix. Some described shapes had basic aerodynamic logic, while other components, like the mercury vortex engines, referenced concepts that, while not understood in Shastri's time, resonate with our current research into fluid dynamics and exotic propulsion. The origins of the text are hotly debated. Mainstream scholars point out it was first committed to paper in the early 20th century, suggesting it may be a creative synthesis of ancient myths and emerging technological ideas of that era. Yet its proponents argue it channels far older knowledge. This single document became a cornerstone for the ancient astronaut theory, asking a powerful question. If this was merely imaginative fiction, why does it so persistently engage with ideas we now associate with anti-gravity and renewable energy sources? The Vaimanika Shastra forces us to confront how an ancient culture conceptualized the pinnacle of travel, not as magic, but as a lost and describable science. The Vaimanika Shastra's mercury vortex engines seem to whisper of a forgotten physics, but what if the knowledge for such wonders was never truly ours to begin with? This question echoes from the silent caves of Qumran, where the dry desert air preserved one of the greatest manuscript discoveries of the 20th century. Among the fragile Dead Sea Scrolls, scholars found fragments of a text long banned from the canonical Bible, a book considered too explosive for inclusion. This was the Book of Enoch, an ancient Jewish apocalyptic work that opens a window onto a world of celestial rebellion and forbidden gifts. Its most gripping section, the Book of the Watchers, tells of angels who descended to earth, beings called the Watchers. These entities broke a divine covenant, and in their time among humanity, they did something extraordinary. They taught. The text lists specific, transformative arts, metallurgy for crafting weapons and jewelry, the science of extracting metals from the earth, techniques for creating cosmetics and dyes, and perhaps most intriguingly, the knowledge of astronomy and the orderly motion of the celestial bodies. This is not a vague myth of Promethean fire. It is a detailed curriculum for accelerating a civilization. The descriptions within Enoch move beyond simple instruction into vivid, almost technological imagery. The text speaks of journeys with the Watchers, of seeing burning mountains and chariots of fire that moved through the heavens. One passage describes traveling in a wind-blown chariot, with wheels that were like a shining sun, and above them, a ceiling like a crystal path. To a modern ear, these are startlingly mechanical terms. The phrase chariots of fire, repeated throughout, evokes more than divine radiance. It suggests a vessel, a contained vehicle of immense power. Were these metaphors for the overwhelming experience of divine presence, as many theologians argue, or could they be attempts by an ancient scribe to describe advanced machinery, literal vehicles that traversed the sky and interacted with the landscape, leaving impressions of fire and polished crystal? The text itself blurs this line, presenting the watchers not just as spiritual beings, but as direct agents of technological transfer. Their teachings lifted humanity from one state of being into another, arming them with knowledge that led both to creation and, as the story warns, to great corruption and conflict. This narrative places the Book of Enoch at the heart of a persistent global theme, the idea of knowledge delivered by superior beings. From the Vimanas of India to the gifts of the Watchers in Judea, cultures worldwide tell of a time when the rules of nature were explained or even manipulated by visitors from beyond. Enoch forces us to ask what we are really reading in these ancient pages. Are they sacred metaphors about the dangers of unchecked ambition and the divine source of wisdom, or are they fragmented histories recording a pivotal moment when human development was intentionally and perhaps catastrophically accelerated by an outside intelligence? The text's own fate, its exclusion from the official canon, hints at the disruptive power of its message. It preserves a tradition that technology and spiritual transgression are intimately linked, a warning that every leap in knowledge carries a profound cost. This recurring motif of gods or angels as teachers sets the stage for our next exploration, where we find not a warning, but a precise and beautiful machine, a device so advanced it seems to have fallen from the stars themselves, waiting for centuries at the bottom of the sea. The warnings of Enoch speak of knowledge that corrupts, but another ancient tradition suggests that true understanding could instead perfect the world. For centuries, in candlelit workshops and secretive libraries across Europe, seekers of a different kind pored over a text they believed held the secret to all creation. This was not a lengthy scroll, but a single, dense paragraph inscribed, legend said, on a slab of emerald. The Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus is perhaps the most influential cryptic text in Western esoteric history. Its opening lines are a cosmic key: that which is above is like to that which is below, and that which is below is like to that which is above, to accomplish the miracles of one thing. As above, so below. To the medieval alchemist, this was the foundational principle of their art, a spiritual law stating that the microcosm of the human soul reflected the macrocosm of the universe, and that by mastering the processes of one, you could influence the other. Their goal was the magnum opus, the great work, which sought to transform base lead into spiritual gold, both in the crucible and within the self. Yet, woven into this spiritual guide are phrases that, to a modern technological mind, sound less like metaphor and more like precise instruction. The text speaks of the operation of the sun and describes the one thing which ascends from earth to heaven and descends again to earth, thereby combining the powers of both the superior and the inferior. For generations, this was read as the cyclical process of distillation in alchemy or the ascent and descent of the soul. But in the 20th century, following the unlocking of atomic energy, a provocative new interpretation emerged. Could the one thing be a primal substance or energy, perhaps a radioactive element that, when properly understood and manipulated, releases tremendous power, ascending in a reaction and then settling back to Earth? Could the operation of the sun be an ancient allegory for nuclear fusion, the very process that fuels the stars? Scholars of Hermetic philosophy rightly caution against a purely literal, technological reading, emphasizing the tablet's profound spiritual and philosophical depth. Its genius lies in its layers of meaning, However, the reason these technological interpretations persist is because the principles the tablet outlines uncannily echo concepts in modern physics. The idea of correspondence, that patterns repeat at every scale from the atomic to the galactic, resonates with fractal geometry and quantum theories where the behavior of the smallest particles influences larger systems. The concept of vibration as the fundamental nature of matter is a cornerstone of string theory. What the Emerald Tablet demonstrates so powerfully is how a deep understanding of natural law can be encoded not in an engineering schematic, but in a philosophical doctrine. It presents a unified theory of reality where spirit and matter, heaven and earth, are part of a single, interactive system. This challenges our modern compartmentalization of science and spirituality. It suggests that our ancestors may have sought to document the laws of the universe in a holistic language of correspondence and transformation, a language we are only now beginning to mathematically decode. The tablet's legacy is a reminder that the quest to harness the fundamental forces of reality is an ancient one, whether the tool used is a philosopher's meditation or a particle accelerator. This theme of encoded knowledge takes a dramatic turn from philosophy to practical mechanics with our next text, a device so shockingly anachronistic it was initially dismissed as a modern hoax, only to become one of archaeology's most bewildering and confirmed artifacts. From the philosophical principles of the Emerald Tablet, we now encounter a physical object that proves such knowledge could be made manifest in brass and bronze. In the silent darkness of the Aegean Sea, 120 feet below the surface, a group of sponge divers in the year 1900 made a startling discovery. Amid the shattered marble and ceramics of a Roman shipwreck, they recovered a lump of corroded green metal about the size of a large book. It was crusted over, fused with marine life, and utterly unremarkable to the untrained eye. Decades would pass before X-ray and advanced imaging technology revealed its true nature. This was not a statue or a simple tool. It was a machine. The Antikythera Mechanism, as it came to be known, is an ancient Greek analog computer of staggering complexity, dated to around 100 years before the Common Era. Its interior is a miniature cosmos of at least 30 precise bronze gears, interlocking with a sophistication not seen again in European history until the great cathedral clocks of the 14th century. This device was a celestial calculator. By turning a hand crank on its side, an operator could predict the positions of the sun, moon, and known planets, forecast lunar and solar eclipses, and even track the 4-year cycle of the ancient Olympic Games. A small, rotating ball showed the phases of the moon, while inscriptions on its casing acted as a detailed astronomical guide. It was, in essence, a portable model of the universe as understood by Greek science. Yet the mechanism itself is only half the story. Its very existence screams of a missing library. To design and build such an instrument required more than a lone genius tinkering in a workshop. It implied a deep, established tradition of precision engineering, a school of thought that understood gear ratios, astronomical cycles, and the translation of mathematical theory into intricate physical form. There must have been textbooks, design schematics, and instruction manuals, a whole corpus of technical literature now lost to us. The Antikythera Mechanism is a single, surviving whisper from that lost conversation between mechanics and the heavens. It forces us to reimagine the intellectual landscape of the ancient world, particularly in centers like Alexandria or Syracuse. If such a sophisticated device was on a ship, likely traveling from the Greek world to Rome, it suggests these objects, while precious, were not unique. What other wonders described in texts that later turned to dust or burned in the Great Library were once part of this technological tradition? Could there have been mechanical star charts in temples, automated theater sets, or even primitive calculating engines used for navigation or architecture? The mechanism is a tangible clue that the ancient world's technological peak may have been far higher, and its fall far more complete than our standard history's record. It stands as a bronze and gear rebuttal to the idea that advanced machinery is a purely modern invention. This single artifact bridges the gap between the theoretical knowledge hinted at in texts like the Emerald Tablet and the practical, hands-on engineering that could model the cosmos. Its silent gears ask us a haunting question. How much of human genius has been not a linear climb, but a series of peaks and valleys, with entire mountains of achievement eroded by the relentless sea of time? The Antikythera Mechanism's silent gears offer proof of a forgotten technical tradition, but in the vibrant city of Alexandria, that tradition was not silent at all. It hissed with steam and sang with the flow of water. In the 1st century of the Common Era, within a workshop buzzing with apprentices and the scent of hot metal, an engineer named Hero compiled a text that reads like a catalogue of ancient wonders. His Pneumatica is not a book of prophecy or spiritual allegory. It is a straightforward engineering manual describing in meticulous detail over 80 devices powered by water, steam, and compressed air. Here, the line between ancient myth and verifiable science vanishes, replaced by the tangible clatter of automatons and the whisper of hydraulics. Hero's world was one of applied genius, where temples seemed to open their own doors as priests approached, powered by hidden fire and cleverly balanced weights. Fountains danced in complex programmed sequences, driven by intricate systems of siphons and chambers. He even described a simple steam engine called an eolipile, a spinning sphere propelled by jets of steam, a clear precursor to the turbines that would power the Industrial Revolution nearly 1700 years later. But perhaps most astonishing are the inventions that feel startlingly modern. Hero designed a vending machine for holy water, where inserting a coin would trip a lever, releasing a measured amount of liquid. He built a self-propelled cart, a programmable vehicle that could move in a preset pattern, powered by a falling weight and a complex arrangement of ropes and axles. These are not vague concepts. They are precise, buildable devices, complete with measurements and operating principles. The Pneumatica stands as a monumental testament to a fact we often overlook. The ancient world, at its height, possessed a profound and practical mastery of mechanics, pneumatics, and even basic programming logic. This was not lost technology in the sense of something magical or alien. It was advanced human engineering, documented, built, and then, inexplicably, allowed to fade into obscurity. Why did Hero's steam engine remain a fascinating toy, never scaled to power ships or mills? Why did his automata become courtly amusements rather than sparking an industrial revolution in Roman Egypt? The text itself provides no answer, only a brilliant blueprint for a path not taken. It forces us to confront a haunting possibility. Technological progress is not inevitable. A society can peer over the edge of a new age, document its principles with perfect clarity, and then simply turn away, leaving its most ingenious creations to gather dust in royal gardens and temple courtyards. The knowledge in the Pneumatica did not vanish into myth. It was written down, preserved, and yet its potential lay dormant for centuries, a quiet whisper of what could have been. This stagnation makes the next category of texts even more perplexing, for they describe technologies so advanced and so integrated into their cultures that their disappearance seems not just a setback, but a profound, civilization-altering loss. Hero's manual was a blueprint for a mechanical age that never arrived. But what if other lost texts held the keys not to simple machines, but to the raw forces of nature itself? The Roman historian Pliny the Elder, in his monumental Natural History, makes a passing reference that has tantalized scholars for centuries. He mentions the Libri Tulliani, the lost books of King Tullus Hostilius, the third king of Rome. These were not royal decrees or histories. According to tradition, they were sacred Etruscan texts acquired by the king that detailed complex rituals for a very specific and dangerous purpose, commanding lightning and controlling the storms. The story goes that Tullus Hostilius, seeking to emulate the legendary prowess of his predecessor who could summon Jupiter's thunder, consulted these forbidden manuscripts. He attempted to perform the elaborate ceremonies described within. The outcome, as recorded by later historians, was both poetic and fatal. The king made an error in the ritual, and he was struck and killed by the very lightning he sought to command. On the surface, this is a classic moral fable about the dangers of hubris and meddling with divine forces. Yet, the persistent detail of the books themselves, their Etruscan origin, and their precise focus on atmospheric phenomena invites a more speculative reading. The Etruscans were renowned in the ancient world as master diviners, experts in interpreting the will of the gods through the flight of birds, and most significantly, the patterns of lightning in the sky. Their discipline, known as the Etruscan discipline, was a highly formalized science of observation and prediction. What if the rituals described in the Tullian manuscripts were not mere superstition, but the preserved remnants of a sophisticated proto-science? Could the elaborate chants and prescribed offerings have been a symbolic framework overlaying a practical study of atmospheric electricity, perhaps even early attempts at grounding or channeling it? The idea that a culture could develop a functional, if ritualized, understanding of such a force is not far-fetched. We see this in other ancient practices, where spiritual ceremony and practical effect were inseparable. The complete loss of these texts, consumed perhaps by the same fire that killed the king, transforms them into a historical phantom. They become a powerful symbol of the fragility of knowledge. We are left with only the echo of a reference in Pliny's work, a story of a king's dramatic end, and a void where a complete system of understanding once existed. This absence is itself a kind of evidence, fueling the speculation that early Rome absorbed and then lost technologies from the advanced Etruscan civilization it conquered. The Tullian manuscripts represent the ultimate historical mystery, a technology known only by its description in a tragedy. Their legacy is a question: how many other libraries, filled with unique understandings of the world, vanished without a single surviving page, leaving behind only legends that sound like magic to our modern ears? This profound loss makes the survival of our next text all the more miraculous, for it comes from a culture that made the preservation of knowledge a sacred duty, encoding it not on fragile papyrus, but in the very language of creation. The silent, corroded gears of the Antikythera Mechanism speak of a forgotten science, but in the sands of Mesopotamia, we find an artifact whose silence is even more profound. During excavations near Baghdad in the 1930s, workers uncovered a collection of simple, unassuming objects. They were clay jars about the size of a fist, each sealed with an asphalt plug. Through this plug, an iron rod had been inserted, surrounded by a rolled copper cylinder. To the untrained eye, they were merely curious ancient containers. But to a modern observer, the arrangement was instantly recognizable. It was the basic anatomy of a galvanic cell. Fill the jar with an acidic electrolyte like vinegar or wine, and a chemical reaction between the dissimilar metals would generate a small electrical current. The so-called Baghdad Battery, dated to the Parthian period around 2,000 years ago, presents a tantalizing enigma. Unlike our previous texts, no manual was found alongside it. There is no papyrus scroll titled On the Generation of Subtle Fire or the Principles of Metallic Affinity. Its purpose is a blank page, and we are left to write the missing manual ourselves. The scholarly debate revolves around what that manual might have contained. The leading practical theory suggests electroplating. A weak current from several such cells linked together could have been used to deposit a thin layer of gold or silver onto other metals, a practice known from the region. This would imply a workshop tradition, a craft secret passed down from master to apprentice, explaining the lack of a formal text. Other interpretations are more mundane, proposing the jars were simply secure storage for sacred scrolls, with the iron and copper acting as protective elements, or that they held a different, non-electrical purpose now lost to us. Yet the electrochemical possibility is what captures the imagination, for it hints at a quiet, applied understanding of a fundamental force. If these were indeed primitive batteries, it means that in the workshops of Ctesiphon or Seleucia, artisans may have harnessed a spark of electricity centuries before Galvani's frogs or Volta's pile. The knowledge required, an awareness of conductive materials, electrolytes, and the basic circuit, would have constituted a proto-science of electrochemistry. This is where the artifact becomes a text written in clay and metal. Its very existence asks a series of haunting questions. Was this a one-off experiment, a curious anomaly, or was it part of a broader, undocumented technological culture? If such cells were in use, even for a specialized craft, where are the other examples, the tools, the finished product showing traces of this ancient electroplating? The Baghdad Battery stands alone, a single sentence from a lost library. Its silent form underscores a brutal truth of history. Knowledge, especially practical, workshop knowledge, is incredibly fragile. It can vanish not in a spectacular cataclysm, but through the slow erosion of trade routes, the shifting of political power, or simply because a generation of masters failed to find worthy apprentices. The Parthian and later Sasanian empires were centers of immense learning and cross-cultural exchange, sitting astride the Silk Road. It is entirely plausible that unique technological insights flourished in such an environment, only to be scattered and lost in the conflicts that followed. The artifact is a ghost of a possibility, a tangible clue that our timeline of discovery may be missing entire chapters. It reminds us that sometimes the most compelling evidence for lost technology is not a detailed description, but a simple, clever object whose intended use we can only guess at, a puzzle missing its instructions. This stands in stark contrast to our next text, which suffers from no such ambiguity. Its instructions are almost overwhelmingly detailed, describing a machine of such specific and wondrous function that it has fueled debate for centuries. The silence of the Baghdad Battery leaves us guessing, but from the plains of ancient India comes a thunderous narrative that leaves little to the imagination. Within the sprawling Sanskrit verses of the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, two of humanity's longest epic poems, we find battles that defy the typical imagery of ancient warfare. These are not mere clashes of infantry and horse-drawn chariots. They are detailed, terrifying accounts that read like dispatches from an age of technological horror. Specific passages describe the Vimanas not as simple flying chariots, but as armed, maneuverable aircraft. The Sundara Kanda of the Ramayana details a Vimana named Pushpaka, a vehicle that follows voice commands, changes size, and travels at the will of its pilot, a description echoing modern concepts of responsive, AI-assisted flight. But the true focus of technological awe lies in the weapons. The texts speak of the Brahmastra, a projectile charged with the power of the universe. Its launch is preceded by a column of smoke and fire as brilliant as 10,000 suns. The aftermath, as described in the Drona Parva of the Mahabharata, is chillingly specific. It says the weapon produced an iron thunderbolt, a gigantic messenger of death which reduced to ashes the entire race of the Vrishnis and the Andhokas. The corpses were so burned as to be unrecognizable. Hair and nails fell out, pottery broke without cause, and the birds turned white. To any modern reader, this is an unmistakable catalogue of symptoms associated with acute radiation poisoning and the blast effects of a nuclear detonation. Traditional scholars and devout readers interpret these passages as profound spiritual allegory. The blinding light represents divine revelation. The falling hair signifies the stripping away of ego, and the destructive power is a metaphor for the ultimate dissolution of illusion, a poetic hyperbole meant to convey the cosmic scale of the epic's moral conflict. They argue that to read them literally is to miss their deeper philosophical and religious meaning. Yet, alternative researchers and some historians of science point to the relentless, clinical specificity of the descriptions. Why would a poet invent the detail of pottery cracking spontaneously or birds losing their pigment? These are not standard images of divine wrath found in other global mythologies. They are eerily precise observations of secondary effects. This has led to the compelling theory that these epics are not pure fiction, but a layered tapestry weaving historical events with spiritual teachings. Could they be cultural memories of a catastrophic, technologically advanced conflict in the distant prehistoric past? A war so devastating its reality was encoded in myth and poetry because the language of science had been lost. The epics themselves treat the knowledge of these weapons with grave solemnity, surrounding them with strict moral codes and warnings of universal ruin if misused, framing them not as magic but as a dangerous science that must be contained. This demonstrates a powerful global concept that epic literature often serves as the primary vessel for preserving technological lore after the fall of the civilization that created it. Just as the Greek myths preserved fragments of advanced bronze working in the tale of Hephaestus or automated guardians like Tullus, the Indian epics may hold the encrypted memory of a forgotten age of power. The Mahabharata and Ramayana force a difficult question upon us. When does a metaphor become so detailed, so consistent with physical reality, that we must consider it might also be a record? The epic battles of the Mahabharata depict a world shattered by unimaginable weapons, a civilization brought low by its own advanced knowledge. Centuries later and continents away, a single mind would embark on a conscious, deliberate quest to rebuild that shattered world, not from myth, but from the fragments of ancient texts he worked tirelessly to collect. In a sunlit studio in Renaissance Milan, Leonardo da Vinci filled thousands of pages with sketches and mirrored script, a frantic effort to capture ideas that seemed to arrive faster than his hand could draw. The most famous collection of these, the Codex Atlanticus, is more than a portfolio of genius. It is a direct bridge across the so-called Dark Ages, a tangible link proving that the thread of technological ambition was never truly broken, only misplaced. Leonardo was an avid student of the classical world. He sought out the rediscovered works of Archimedes and Hero of Alexandria, studying their principles of hydraulics and mechanics not as historical curiosities, but as blueprints. His famous aerial screw, a design for a machine to bore into the air, was not conceived in a vacuum. He wrote of being inspired by the natural world, but also by ancient accounts of flight. His designs for an armored, rolling tank propelled by crankshafts, his sketches for a breathing apparatus to allow a diver to walk on the seafloor, his plans for automated looms and hydraulic pumps, all were framed as improvements upon ancient ideas. In his mind, he was not inventing from nothing. He was reconstructing, re-engineering, and fulfilling a lineage of invention that had been tragically interrupted. This mindset is the key to understanding Leonardo's place in our story. The Codex Atlanticus represents the reawakening of a specific kind of imagination, one that looks at a problem and seeks a mechanical solution, an imagination that the ancient texts of Greece, Rome, and perhaps whispers from further east proved was not only possible but had been achieved before. His work screams a silent question into the past. If I, with my limited resources and these fragmented texts, can conceive of a helicopter or a submarine, what might the original architects of this knowledge, with their full understanding, have actually built? Leonardo stands as the ultimate testament to the idea that technological progress is not a straight line but a spiral. We lose knowledge, we forget principles, and then centuries later, a brilliant mind stumbles upon the old clues and the cycle of discovery begins again, often independently arriving at similar conclusions. His notebooks are the physical evidence of the quest for lost technology becoming a conscious, driving human endeavor. This rekindled ambition did not stop with the Renaissance. It would soon turn its gaze to a civilization that had made the fusion of the spiritual and the mechanical a central tenet of its existence. A culture that wrote detailed manuals not for war machines but for achieving eternal life. While Leonardo sought to reconstruct machines from classical fragments, a parallel tradition in ancient China pursued a far more ambitious goal: the fusion of human consciousness with the machinery of the cosmos itself. Deep within the sprawling Taoist canon, a vast library of spiritual and technical knowledge, we find the Beipuzi, or master who embraces simplicity. Written in the 4th century by the scholar and alchemist Ji Hong, this text is a fascinating window into a world where the laboratory and the meditation chamber were one and the same. Ji Hong meticulously recorded recipes for elixirs of immortality, complex formulas involving cinnabar, mercury, and rare minerals, which he believed could refine the physical body and allow it to transcend earthly limits. To modern chemistry, these are often recipes for potent, even toxic, substances, yet they represent a serious, systematic investigation into material transformation. But the Beipuzi ventures far beyond pharmacology. In its chapters, Ji Hong describes astonishing mechanical devices, flying vehicles constructed from carefully selected woods and powered not by engines we would recognize, but by the concentrated manipulation of Kai, the fundamental life force that flows through all things. He writes of self-moving carts and automated figures, mechanisms that operated through this same esoteric energy principle. This is where the Taoist pursuit reframes our entire understanding of lost technology. For Ji Hong and his contemporaries, a flying machine was not merely a vehicle. It was an extension of a perfected human state. The technology was inseparable from the spiritual and physiological cultivation of the operator. To pilot a Kai-powered vehicle, one first had to master the internal alchemy of the self, to become a conduit for the natural forces one wished to command. This perspective sees technology not as external tools, but as integrated systems where physics, medicine, and philosophy were woven into a single, holistic discipline. The energy concepts they sought to harness, the flow and transformation of Kai, find intriguing parallels in modern research into fields like bioelectricity, quantum vacuum energy, or the idea that consciousness may interact with physical systems in ways we do not yet understand. The Taoist adept was, in a sense, attempting to become both the power source and the guidance computer for their devices. This represents a profound departure from our modern paradigm of specialization, where an engineer, a doctor, and a philosopher would rarely speak the same technical language. The loss lamented here is not merely of a particular flying machine or elixir recipe, but of an entire framework for knowledge, one that did not separate the quest to understand the universe from the quest to perfect the human being within it. The Beipuzi challenges us to consider whether our own technological path, for all its staggering success, has overlooked a fundamental dimension: the conscious operator's integral role within the system. It suggests that some ancient texts may not be describing machines that failed, but a science that was, in its essence, too complete, too interconnected for a fragmented world to sustain. The Taoist pursuit fused mind and machine, but in the shadowed sanctuaries of ancient Egypt, another form of power may have been literally set in stone. Deep within the crypts of the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, far from the desert sun, a series of strange and captivating bas-reliefs cover the walls. One in particular has ignited fierce debate for decades. It shows a large, elongated object reminiscent of a modern glass bulb. Inside this bulb, a snake extends along its length, its body held aloft by a pillar-like support. The snake's head touches the end of a cable that leads to a box upon which a kneeling figure rests. To many modern eyes, the resemblance to an incandescent light bulb, complete with a filament and a power source, is startling and immediate. This is the Dendera light, a silent iconographic puzzle carved in meticulous detail. Unlike our previous texts, this is not a manuscript that can be read. It is a visual statement, a permanent question etched into sandstone. To understand it, we must reconstruct the lost manual that would have explained its meaning, the theological or technical texts that priests would have consulted to interpret this sacred image. Mainstream Egyptology offers a compelling symbolic reading. They identify the bulb as a lotus flower, a potent symbol of creation and rebirth emerging from the primordial waters. The snake is the cosmic serpent, a representation of the god Harsomptus, and the act of its emergence from the lotus signifies the moment of creation, the birth of light and life from the darkness. The supporting pillar is the Jed pillar, a symbol of stability, and the box is a shrine. In this view, the entire scene is a complex mythological diagram, a spiritual blueprint for the universe's origin, not an electrical one. Yet, the alternative theory persists with its own intriguing logic. Proponents point to the practical challenges of the temple's inner chambers. The crypt where this relief is found, like many sanctuaries and tombs, is a space devoid of natural light. Soot stains from torches or oil lamps would be evident, yet in many such spaces they are curiously absent or minimal. This raises a practical question. How did the artists and priests work in these profound depths? How were elaborate rituals requiring precise movements and the reading of sacred texts performed in total blackness? The theory suggests that the Egyptians, masters of engineering and early chemistry, might have developed a form of arc lighting or primitive illumination, perhaps using devices similar to the Baghdad Battery to create a sustained, soot-free glow. The Dendera relief in this interpretation is not a literal schematic, but a symbolic representation of that technology, sanctifying a practical tool by framing it within the language of divine creation. The snake becomes the filament, the lotus bulb the glass enclosure, and the box a ritualized power supply. This idea is amplified by the temple's dedication to Hathor, goddess of joy, music, and significantly the distant sky. Illuminating her house with a steady, artificial light could have been seen as bringing a piece of her celestial realm into the earth. The relief ultimately highlights a profound truth about how ancient cultures documented advanced knowledge. Not everything was written on papyrus. Some truths were encoded in the sacred visual language of the temple, where a single image could hold layers of meaning, from the deeply spiritual to the potentially practical. It stands as a monument to the idea that the drive for illumination, both spiritual and physical, is a fundamental human impulse. Whether it depicts the birth of a god or the blueprint for a lamp, the Dendera light forces us to look beyond the obvious and consider that the greatest texts are sometimes those written without words, waiting in the dark for their meaning to be seen. The silent stone of Dendera asks us to see light in a new way, but what if the ultimate lost technology is not something we can see at all? It is the very fabric of reality, vibrating at a frequency we have only just begun to measure. To explore this, we must return to the cryptic wisdom of Hermes Trismegistus, but this time to a broader collection of teachings that have echoed through the centuries. Beyond the emerald tablet lies the vast Hermetic Corpus, a body of philosophical and spiritual texts compiled in antiquity, and its more modern interpretation, the Kybalion, published in the early 20th century. These works outline 7 universal principles, and one in particular resonates with a startling modern truth, the principle of vibration. This principle states simply yet profoundly that nothing is at rest. Everything moves, everything vibrates, from the grand sweep of a planet in its orbit to the smallest particle. all of existence is in a state of constant, dynamic oscillation. To a reader in ancient Alexandria or Renaissance Florence, this was a mystical insight into the nature of a living, breathing cosmos. To a physicist today, it is the foundational observation of quantum mechanics and electromagnetism. The chair you sit on, the screen you watch, even the air you breathe, all are composed of atoms whose constituent particles are in ceaseless, energetic motion. What the Hermetic sages described as a spiritual truth, we now describe with mathematical equations. This alignment is where the idea of lost technology takes its most radical turn. If the ancients understood reality as a spectrum of vibration, could they have also understood how to manipulate it? The texts suggest this possibility. They speak of the interconnectedness of all things and, crucially, the interconnection between mind and matter. The Kybalion elaborates on the principle of mentalism, stating the all is mind, the universe is mental. This is not merely poetic. It proposes that consciousness is not a byproduct of the physical brain, but a fundamental component of the universe itself, interacting with the vibrational field of matter. From this perspective, a truly advanced technology would not rely on levers and gears alone, but on the focused application of consciousness to influence the vibrational state of the physical world. This concept moves us far beyond steam engines and batteries into the realm of what some modern researchers term psychotronics or energy manipulating technologies, the idea that thought and intention could be harnessed as a direct causal force. While firmly on the fringe of established science, this notion finds curious echoes in certain quantum experiments, like the observer effect, where the act of measurement appears to influence the behavior of particles. The Hermetic texts frame this not as a laboratory anomaly, but as a natural law waiting to be mastered. They imply a lost science where meditation, sacred geometry, and precise ritual were not superstitions, but the user interface for a technology operating on the vibrational substrate of reality. Imagine a culture that developed not tools for the hand, but tools for the mind, devices or practices designed to amplify and direct conscious intent to heal, to communicate, or to shape physical materials. The loss here would not be of blueprints, but of an entire mode of perception and training. We may have preserved the philosophical conclusion that mind and matter are linked, but we lost the rigorous, applied discipline that once turned that principle into a practical art. This shifts our search from digging up artifacts to deciphering the inner meaning of practices we once dismissed as mere mysticism. The Hermetic Corpus challenges our most basic assumption about technology, that it must be external and mechanical. It suggests the greatest machine ever built might be the human consciousness, and the lost manual is the one that taught us how to operate it at its full potential. The Hermetic texts propose a universe humming with conscious vibration, but what if a forgotten chapter of that story was written not in philosophy, but in the practical language of dikes and calendars? In 1867, a Frisian ship's carpenter named Cornelis over de Linden presented a curious family heirloom to a local archivist. It was a manuscript written on a strange, thick paper in an archaic script, claiming to be the chronicle of his ancestors, the Frisians. This was the Oera book, a text that would become one of Europe's most notorious historical controversies. Written in a mix of Old Frisian and invented language, it tells an epic, alternate history of Northern Europe. It describes a sophisticated, matriarchal civilization flourishing over 4,000 years ago, a seafaring people called the Frians who possessed advanced democratic institutions, a complex legal code, and remarkable technological prowess. Their society, according to the book, was built upon an intricate mastery of water management, constructing great dikes and canals to tame the North Sea, and they followed a precise, astronomical calendar system that governed their agriculture and rituals. The narrative is one of rise and catastrophic fall, detailing invasions, natural disasters, and the eventual fragmentation and loss of this enlightened culture. For many in the late 19th century, especially those drawn to romantic nationalism and alternative histories, the Oera book was a bombshell. It seemed to offer a glorious, technologically capable origin story for the Germanic peoples, predating and even surpassing the civilizations of the Mediterranean. It presented a vision of a lost golden age that felt both ancient and strangely progressive. The problem, as established linguists and historians soon demonstrated, was the manuscript itself. The paper was chemically dated to the mid-19th century. The language was a pastiche containing grammatical constructions and vocabulary that betrayed a modern hand attempting to fabricate antiquity. The script, while clever, showed inconsistencies unknown in genuine Old Frisian texts. The overwhelming academic consensus is clear. The Oera book is a clever, elaborate forgery, likely crafted in the 1840s or 50s. Yet to dismiss it entirely is to miss its profound cultural lesson. Why did this forgery, and others like it, capture such intense imagination? The book resonated because it tapped into a deep and universal human yearning, the longing for a more advanced, harmonious, and spiritually connected past. In an era of rapid industrialization and social upheaval, the idea of a lost Nordic civilization that balanced technological mastery with social wisdom was powerfully attractive. It served as a mirror, reflecting contemporary anxieties about progress and loss. This is the true function of many such forgeries in the search for lost technology. They are not merely lies but creative syntheses. They often weave together genuine folklore, misunderstood archaeological finds, and contemporary scientific hopes into a compelling narrative. The Oera book's descriptions of water management may have been inspired by observation of actual, ancient Frisian turpen, or dwelling mounds, while its calendar systems echoed growing public interest in astronomy and ancient timekeeping. The forgery succeeds not in revealing a true past, but in articulating a potent myth, one that fulfills a psychological need for roots and forgotten grandeur. It acts as a cautionary tale, reminding us that our desire to find evidence of advanced ancestors can sometimes lead us to create the very evidence we wish to find. It underscores the critical importance of rigorous verification, of separating emotional appeal from material fact. Yet, it also shows that the stories we fabricate about lost technology reveal what we value, what we fear, and what we hope our own civilization might achieve or recover. This necessary skepticism prepares us for a final text where no such doubt exists, a manuscript whose authenticity is unquestioned, whose material is genuine parchment and ink, and whose contents describe a machine so specific and so baffling that it stands as perhaps the single greatest enigma in the entire canon of lost technology. The Oera book reminds us how powerfully we can project our own desires onto the past, but in the sands of Upper Egypt, a temple stands that requires no such projection. Its walls speak for themselves in a language of stone and precise glyph. The Temple of Edfu, dedicated to the falcon god Horus, is one of the best preserved ancient monuments in the world. Beyond its towering pylons and grand courtyards, the inner walls are not merely adorned with typical scenes of pharaohs and deities. They are covered, from floor to ceiling, in dense, meticulous columns of text, a permanent library carved into sandstone. These are the Edfu building texts, and they offer something extraordinary, a step-by-step narrative of creation itself. They describe the mythical first time, the Zep Tepi, when the gods walked the earth and established the sacred order of the world. Central to this story is the creation of the primordial mound, the first patch of dry land to emerge from the waters of chaos. But the texts do not describe this as a simple act of divine will. They detail it as a construction project. They speak of specific tools, of exact measurements, of laying out foundations and erecting structures according to a celestial plan. The language is technical, almost architectural. One passage, for instance, speaks of a rod of gold used for measuring and of a god who caused the temple to appear by his utterance. To a conventional Egyptologist, this is rich mythological symbolism. The tools are metaphors for divine powers, the measurements reflect cosmic harmony, and the utterance is the creative power of speech, a common theme in Egyptian theology. The texts are seen as a sacred blueprint, not for physical construction, but for the ritual reenactment of creation, ensuring the universe remained in balance. Yet, a different interpretation has emerged from researchers looking at the staggering precision of ancient stonework, not just in Egypt but at sites like Puma Punku or Baalbek. Could these texts be more than metaphor? Could they be the preserved, ritualized memory of a literal technology? The mention of causing a temple to appear by utterance is particularly provocative. It echoes persistent legends from cultures worldwide that speak of stones being made to move or soften with sound, with chants or specific frequencies. Some researchers propose that the Edfu texts, in their esoteric language, are encoding principles of acoustic or vibrational engineering. The rod of gold might not be a mere measuring stick, but a tool calibrated to a specific resonance. The detailed instructions could be a formula, a lost manual for using harmonic tools to shape and position megaliths with a precision that still baffles modern engineers. This idea sits at the fascinating crossroads between myth and applied science. It suggests that the ancients may have documented their most advanced techniques not in separate engineering manuals, but within the sacred texts that gave those techniques their meaning and spiritual justification. The knowledge of how to shape a 50-ton block was inseparable from the knowledge of why that block belonged in a specific, cosmically aligned place. The technology and the theology were two sides of the same stone tablet. The Edfu building texts challenge our modern compartmentalization. They force us to ask if we have been reading ancient documents with the wrong dictionary. We look for literal schematics where they wrote in sacred allegory, and we dismiss spiritual descriptions that might also contain technical truths. To unlock the secrets of lost technology, we may need to learn to read like the ancients did, to see the instruction manual for a sonic levitation device woven into the hymn of a creation myth. This skill of layered interpretation becomes absolutely essential for our final and most perplexing ancient text, a book that does not describe machines of stone or metal, but a living technology of consciousness, promising a power so profound it was considered too dangerous to be fully understood. The Edfu texts speak of creation through sacred utterance, but one final book offers a far more terrifying narrative of uncreation, a story where the sky itself turned against the earth. In the quiet corners of alternative history circles rests a controversial volume known as the Kolbrin Bible. This is a modern compilation, first published in the 1990s, said to be transcribed from much older manuscripts of Celtic and Egyptian origin preserved by secretive groups over centuries. Its authenticity is hotly debated by scholars, with many dismissing it as a 20th century creation. Yet, like the Oera book, its power lies not in its provenance, but in the profound synthesis of themes it presents. The Kolbrin weaves together a grand and catastrophic saga. It describes an advanced global civilization, a people of great knowledge and technological skill, brought to utter ruin not by war or invasion, but by a celestial event. The text names this agent of doom the Destroyer, a wandering star or planetary body that periodically enters our solar system. Its passages are vivid and harrowing, describing the heavens burning, great tides swallowing lands, and fires sweeping across the world. But within this tale of apocalypse lies a crucial technological thread. The civilization, aware of the cyclical nature of this threat, had developed the means to predict its arrival. The Kolbrin speaks of observatories and complex calendars, of sciences dedicated to reading the signs in the sky and the disturbances in the earth. It hints at knowledge used to construct shelters, to preserve seeds and records, and to navigate the aftermath. This is not a story of magic saving the day, but of applied science and preparation in the face of an inevitable cosmic cycle. Whether a genuine fragment of ancient memory or a brilliant modern passage, the Kolbrin Bible serves as a powerful capstone to our journey through 15 texts. It directly ties technological advancement to planetary disaster, suggesting that the highest purpose of a civilization's knowledge may not be to build towers, but to ensure survival when the foundations of the world are shaken. It echoes the warnings in the Book of Enoch about knowledge leading to corruption and cataclysm, mirrors the Mahabharata's descriptions of world-ending fire, and resonates with the Hermetic principle of cyclical ages. It proposes that the lost technologies we seek may not have been for conquest or convenience, but for continuity, the tools and wisdom needed to pass through a bottleneck of extinction. This completes our list, but it opens a door to a far larger mystery. If these scattered whispers from across time and culture are pointing to a shared truth, what does that truth mean for us here and now, in a world once again facing existential questions about its own survival? Across these 15 texts, from the Mercury engines of India to the celestial gears of Greece, a series of haunting patterns emerges from the technological void. The first and most persistent motif is the presence of a teacher. Whether they are called the Watchers, the Gods, or celestial sages, these figures are not vague deities. They are described as direct instructors, delivering specific arts like metallurgy, astronomy, and the principles of flight. This theme suggests a powerful, perhaps universal, cultural memory of a time when knowledge was not slowly accumulated, but deliberately transferred. The second pattern is the catastrophic loss. This advanced understanding is almost never said to have faded peacefully. It is drowned in great floods, consumed in wars fought with terrible weapons, or sealed away after a fatal mistake like the king struck by his own lightning. Knowledge in these stories is fragile and dangerous, a flame too easily extinguished or one that burns down the house. Third, we see the consistent encoding of this technology. It is rarely presented as a straightforward manual. Instead, it is woven into epic poetry, hidden within spiritual allegory, carved as temple iconography, or encrypted in philosophical principles like as above, so below. This tells us that the ancients did not separate the technical from the sacred. To understand the machine, you had to understand its place in the cosmos. Finally, the technological interests themselves align with striking consistency. Flight, the control of energy like lightning or steam, precise astronomy, and the manipulation of fundamental forces like vibration and consciousness, these are not random. They are the core pursuits of a civilization seeking mastery over its environment and its place in the stars. What do these recurring patterns truly reveal? On one level, they speak to deep aspects of human psychology and cultural memory. The teacher motif may represent our innate understanding that all knowledge is built upon what came before, personifying the chain of learning into a divine figure. The cataclysm stories could be encrypted memories of real, devastating natural disasters, volcanic eruptions, comet impacts, or great floods that reset societies and shattered their continuity. The encoding in myth simply reflects how pre-literate or early literate cultures preserved complex information, packaging practical truths in memorable, symbolic narratives to ensure their survival across generations. From this perspective, these texts are monuments to human ingenuity. They show diverse cultures independently and creatively, grappling with the same big questions and arriving at similar visionary concepts, from flying machines to the atomic nature of matter. Their similarities are a testament to the universal human mind at work, Yet, the consistency is so profound it invites a more radical question. Could these be more than independent inventions? Could they be scattered fragments distorted by time and translation of a single prehistoric instruction manual? The idea of a common source, an advanced global civilization predating our recorded history, or even an external influence attempts to explain why the same complex ideas appear in cultures that supposedly had no contact. It suggests the Vimanas, the chariots of fire, the flying carts of the Bayapuzi, and the sky gods of every pantheon might all be describing different aspects of the same forgotten reality. This is not necessarily about ancient astronauts, but about the possibility of a profound historical blank spot, a cycle of civilization we have yet to archaeologically uncover. The patterns in the void, therefore, present us with a fundamental choice in how we read our own past. Are we seeing the brilliant parallel dreams of humanity, or are we piecing together the faded chapters of a lost history book, one that taught a science of energy and consciousness we are only now beginning to rediscover? This synthesis leads us to the final and perhaps most personal implication of all. The journey through these 15 texts is more than a catalogue of curiosities. It is a mirror held up to our own place in time. We have stood before the intricate gears of the Antikythera Mechanism and gazed upon the cryptic bulb of Dendera, each artifact a silent question mark in the timeline we thought we knew. These accounts, whether read as spiritual allegory or fragmented history, collectively dismantle the comfortable idea of human advancement as a straight, upward line. Instead, they paint a picture of a spiral where peaks of understanding are reached, lost to disaster or forgetfulness, and then slowly, painstakingly, climbed toward once more. The Vimana manuals and the warnings of the Watchers speak to a recurring theme, that the fruits of profound knowledge are inseparable from the responsibility of wielding it. Every civilization, ancient or modern, grapples with this same eternal equation. The silence that followed these described wonders is a humbling reminder. It tells us that no achievement, no matter how advanced, is permanent. Libraries burn, languages fade, and the meticulous craft of a master engineer can vanish when the social order that supported it crumbles. This is not a message of despair, but one of profound perspective. It asks us to look at our own world of quantum computers and genetic editing not as the inevitable pinnacle of history, but as another chapter in a very long, very cyclical story. We might be building upon the same foundational principles those ancient scribes tried to articulate in their own symbolic language. The call from these texts is not for uncritical belief in ancient astronauts or forgotten super-civilizations. It is a call for a deeper, more imaginative form of curiosity. It invites us to read between the lines of myth, to look at an epic poem and ask if it contains a warning about radiation, or to study a temple relief and ponder if it sanctifies a principle of physics. This open-mindedness is the real tool we need to excavate the past. The greatest technology we stand to rediscover may not be a device, but a way of thinking, a holistic understanding that sees no barrier between the spiritual and the mechanical, between the story of a people and the science they mastered. Our journey ends not with an answer, but with a richer set of questions. Which of these portals to the past resonated most deeply with you? Was it the precise engineering of Hero's workshop, the cosmic warnings of the Mahabharata, or the philosophical keys of the Emerald Tablet? Share your thoughts below, and if you are hungry for more explorations into history's greatest enigmas, consider subscribing to continue the search. For in listening to these whispers from the void, we may just find the guidance we need to navigate our own future. The choice between a Vimana's flight or the Antikythera's celestial map is more than a preference, it's a reflection of what we value most. So tell me in the comments which lost manual you'd reclaim and why. Your perspective adds a vital layer to this ongoing search. If these glimpses into forgotten worlds have sparked your curiosity, please consider subscribing and tapping the notification bell. Our exploration continues next time, shifting from text to tangible proof, as we examine physical artifacts that defy conventional history, objects that simply should not exist according to our established timelines. Thank you for joining this journey through the whispers of the past. Keep looking deeper and never stop questioning the story.